All right, we've hit the top of the hour. Good morning or afternoon again to everyone, depending on where you may be. Thank you for holding and welcome to today's Cloud Services Community Webinar. Our topic for today is Show Me the Money, Succeeding with the Recurring Revenue Model. All phones are currently in a listen-only mode, and later there will be a question and answer session with instructions being given at that time. You may also ask a question at any time using the chat window located in the control panel. Chat questions will be answered at the end of the presentation, and today's session is being recorded, and we'll be providing a copy of today's materials to all following the call. Now I'd like to introduce our expert speaker for today's webinar. Mark Emanuelson is the director at Atlantic Technologies, a 100-person European software consulting firm. Mark has worked with dozens of firms to help them activate a new CRM strategy, including tools like social media, mobile apps, sales, marketing, and customer service technologies using leading platforms like Salesforce.com and Oracle. Previous to his role at Atlantic Technologies, Mark worked over 20 years leading global channel teams at companies. He built a 100-person channel team across 20 countries for Cisco, tripling revenue in emerging markets. Mark also led the channel for electronics giant Panasonic across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Mark is originally from the Silicon Valley in California and has been based in London for 10 years. Mark, welcome, and take it away.
Well, thank you very much, and it's my pleasure to be sharing this time with you. I know we're at a critical stage in the IT industry. We're coming out of the recession now, and everyone's looking for where the next big lift is in our business, and also with changes happening with social media technology, with internet-based technologies, mobile apps. People are also looking at how do we make money in the new world when the changing nature of IT has really changed for implementers like our own. I work at Atlantic Technologies here in Europe, and as the introduction said, we're a 100-person consulting firm. I'm based here in London, and I'm talking to you from the United Kingdom today. And it's my pleasure to share with you some insights about what we've gone through as an integrator over the last basically 17 years in existence here in Europe, and how the changing nature of our business and how we work with our partners has changed how we activate our channels and how we realize revenue, and really how we show me the money, because that's what we're all here to learn about. So let me go through a little bit of introduction about who we are. We work with leading partner platforms like Salesforce.com, like Oracle, IBM, other applications for building custom mobile apps or building contact centers or call centers in the cloud, basically building cloud applications. So the firm that I'm with was started in 1997 and started as an ERP integrator. So we were really traditional IT in those days, delivering very large and significant applications on server-based systems for big clients, big multinational clients. But today we deliver most of our applications through the cloud. So we're not actually provisioning any hardware or building up any hardware for our clients for the most part, but we're building very effective software applications for CRM, for mobile applications, call centers, ERP, business intelligence, many things, because the platforms have gotten a lot smarter. The things that we can deliver as a partner of these leading companies has gotten a lot more significant and easier to provision, and it's really changed the nature of our business. So when we're working with leading clients like Vodafone or Novartis, Technogym, Nestle, Ducati Motorcycles, GSK, the list goes on. We have 150 customers. The nature of what they're looking at from IT has also changed. So in our business at Atlantic Technologies, we're an implementer. So we're taking applications from leading providers, building up applications for multinational customers. And what I'm here to do to share with you is some insights that we've gleaned from the transition that we've been navigating through IT, what our customers are asking for, and then really give you some ideas about how you might go about your own business model in being successful in what we're calling the new recurring revenue or subscription-based models of IT. We're all interested to learn about how to show me the money. How do we make money in this new recurring revenue model when payments are spread out over a long period of time, when the customers are subscribing, then maybe the upgrade path is very different. So everyone's asking in the industry, show me the money. The cloud's exciting, mobile's exciting, social's exciting, but how do we make money in this new world? So before we go into some insights from my perspective, I'd really like to hear from you. We're going to do a short poll and see about what proportion of revenue you're getting from cloud services today or recurring revenue models versus more traditional forms. So I'll turn it back over for our poll master to take us through the poll.
All right, thanks, Mark. I'm currently launching the poll, so if everyone could go ahead and let us know what % of your current revenue is cloud services. All right, we got a good amount of everyone voted so far. I'll hang out for another 5-10 seconds to let everyone else trickle in that wants to participate here. All right, I'm going to close the poll here and share the results. So it looks like over half of the audience right now at 60% is at 0 to 10%. 20% of the audience is at 10 to 25%. And then a three-way split at 7% for the 25 to 50% range, 50 to 75%, and 70 to 100% of revenue. So Mark, I'll turn that back over to you.
Very good. So it looks like, like many of us in IT today, you're asking the right questions. You're looking for some answers. How do we find money in this new recurring revenue model? With 60% only having 0 to 10% of revenue through cloud services, clearly it's a big opportunity, and hopefully you're here on the webinar to learn about the next steps in that and what you can offer your clients, because customers are asking for this, and how we respond and how we help them navigate the usage of IT is really important right now because the tools have gotten so much better. So really interested to see the polling results, so thank you for participating in that. Moving on, let's see. The transition to recurring revenue is definitely on, right? Because looking at the left-hand side here of the slide, the traditional model we know and probably are doing today, and it's been a model that has been very successful for firms like the one I'm working with now, Atlantic Technologies, and many others over the last decades, where we go in, we put in some big hardware, some big servers, put in very expensive applications that we're reselling at the front end, and then offer lots of consulting services and do maybe very long projects over a year to put in the applications. This is how a lot of enterprise applications have been done and are still done today, which is great for partners like us or implementers, because we make a lot of money on consulting services. We make a lot of money on the resale of the applications. And we make a lot of money when we go back in a few years with a big upgrade. And this has been a great model for partners who you may be working with, or partners like our own. But it's going away. And what's happening is the customers are demanding what we're calling a recurring revenue model in this webinar, a subscription-based model, where instead of paying big upfront fees and putting in a big application that's going to sit on big servers or on-premise for years, they want things that are a bit lighter, a bit smaller in projects, but more agile, which also has a big implication to partners like us. So at Atlantic Technologies, the projects that we work on today are smaller in margin than they were in the old days, the good old days. The value of our consulting services also increases because the software part of it is smaller. It's a subscription-based sale, so we need to show value and continue to show value over a longer period of time rather than just at the beginning when we install a system or later when we do the upgrades. And in many cases, we're making a margin on the subscription or the application that the customers are paying for, but because that margin and subscription base is spread out over time now, it comes in over a long period of time rather than up front like it used to in the old days. So this is entering a big transition for IT, and it sounds like from the results of the poll, it's something that you're investigating, and you're very interested in learning how to navigate that in your own business and those of your partners as well. The customer value proposition, on the other hand, is clearly in the favor of recurring revenue. This is a profile here on the slide of what a typical software installation looked like in the on-premise or the old traditional model, as we're calling it. So, as I said, big upfront capital expense to put the system in. Then they might start to get some value out of the system after about a year after it's been in place. And then the big upgrade comes along 3 to 5 years later, very expensive, big upgrade, and they put that in, so that's negative value for a little while, and then they start to get some value. And we go on and on and on like this over years. And if the customer skips an upgrade, the swing in the curve can be even higher or be even longer in terms of the negative value and putting in, you know, an upgrade that you've missed or the second generation of an upgrade later. So what customers are looking for in the cloud model, in the recurring revenue model, as we're calling it from our perspective, is they want to put in something that's lighter up front, but then continue to have escalating value as they go along. And this is the value of cloud computing. This is the value to the customer and why there's such a big shift from the traditional model to the cloud today, because the value that customers realize is realized in a shorter period of time because the projects tend to be smaller to implement or easier for partners to implement. So there's lower upfront capital expenditure. And then they continue to get escalating value through the life of the application, because generally when we're working with applications like we work with Salesforce and other ones, upgrades are free. So they're automatic, so we don't have that continuous sort of upgrade story where we're coming back every few years. They're getting free upgrades every year, sometimes multiple times in the year. And it's just giving them continuous ROI as they scale in their use of the application. And this is very, very attractive to people that buy IT today, to the end user customers at enterprises all around the world, really. Because, you know, the headaches of very expensive upfront capital expenditure and upgrades have really been eliminated in the new cloud services model. Smaller, more agile projects that scale with the organization's usage. So customers are demanding it, and the shift to the cloud, to mobile, to social, and the other technologies that are all internet-based is definitely on, and we need to respond to that. The customer concerns have also changed, because in the more traditional model, we used to be selling into the CIO and the IT organization almost exclusively, and we would do a big, huge project, and we go in and we talk to the IT people. We're putting in servers, we're putting in applications, we're doing lots of things with their infrastructure. With the cloud, CIOs are still definitely involved, because the CIO role is evolving and changing. It's changing from a person in an organization who's just keeping the systems running and maintenance and support of the business to someone who's really driving the business forward, who's building in new functions of IT, new interesting ways to bring the business forward and building solid business cases around what they're provisioning. But then they still are concerned about things, and so there's some new concerns in the cloud, as we know, with security, because the applications are hosted off-site, usually at a data center, what we call a public cloud, where they're mixed with other customers in a global data center infrastructure. They're also concerned about support, because the CIO and the CTO are generally responsible for IT support for the organization. Also, with the cloud and the recurring revenue model, a lot of new and interesting applications have come to market, and a lot of innovation is happening at an increasingly rapid pace. But that also lends itself to some concerns about the experience or the installed base of providers that are in the market today. You know, if they've only been in the market for a couple of years, is it something you really want to run your enterprise on, for instance? So these are concerns when you're coming out with your recurring revenue model that you really want to address up front. And I get these questions every day from clients that we're speaking to. You know, what's the security? Where's it hosted? What kind of support will you provide 24/7? What experience do you have? You know, how many customers are using this? So giving the CIO organization that kind of comfort that these things are going to be handled, because mostly they're outsourcing now a lot of the support and maintenance of the cloud to you or your application or your partners. So they need to have that assurance, and if you can address those up front, that's very valuable. What's also very interesting, though, is the business side of IT purchases is becoming a lot more relevant. A lot of IT budgets are really getting initiated and controlled by the business side of organizations, much more so than they did, a decade or so ago in the old traditional model of IT, where IT would gather the requirements, go and find enterprise applications. Now, because of the speed and agility that projects can be initiated in the cloud, then business people are becoming real drivers in making these decisions and might even wire around IT and go ahead and start using things. It's happening every day. And so they're concerned about different things. And so you want to make sure that your application is addressing the kind of things that business people are most concerned about. And that's how do they grow revenues for the company, or how do they reduce their cost to make their people more productive? How do they leverage the new and cool and exciting new things that they see on the internet today with mobile technologies, with social technologies, digital ways of interacting with customers and getting business processes accomplished. And so business people are really interested in speed, agility, cost, productivity, revenue growth. And so how does your application address these is also very important. And it's also very important how the CIO now can also articulate how the business can be supported with these functions. And so that's been the big change that's happened, I think, in the last years around the transition to the cloud, is that the business is becoming a lot more important in the decisions and often is the single procurement source for some applications. So addressing those customers' concerns is really important. Now, the benefits for recurring revenue are really good for you, because moving to a recurring revenue model might have some dislocations in terms of how you're working today and the changing cash flow and other things that we'll go into. But the tools today have become a lot more scalable. Generally, in terms of your investment in developer time or your partner's investment in developer time to configure applications has become a lot simpler. And that's because a lot of the leading vendors that are really aggressively moving into recurring revenue models, like Salesforce, like Oracle, and others, they make available pre-built application components. So partners, certified partners like my own at Atlantic Technologies, or our own, the company I work with, we can take those pre-built application components and we can look really good in front of customers. So we can quickly configure a system using a public cloud infrastructure and build up an enterprise application for a customer and start to show and demonstrate things that we could never do before. They would take quite a long time to do. So it takes a lot fewer developer time from our organization to provision these, because the tools have a lot more intelligence built in from the beginning. And then that allows us to scale to more applications or scale to more projects or customers. So that's a big benefit in the recurring revenue model. The second major benefit that I'd like to highlight is also the minimization of churn and how we can build loyalty now with our customers. So it's really changed. On the one hand, it's almost easier for customers to switch because things can become easy to move over to another platform. However, on the other hand, we can actually become a lot more relevant to the customer's ongoing business process because we can deliver value much faster than we did in the old world. So we can then use that as a starting point to continue to innovate and grow with the customer. So for instance, a lot of the projects that I work on with our clients, we might start in, say, sales, building up a sales management system, and then include marketing. And then we might include finance, and then we might include HR, we might include operations, we might include lots of other functions across the organization. So the ability for us to scale across a wide assortment of people on one platform and have integrated processes that work across the organization is really advantageous today. And then if we add to that they're continuing to get updates and upgrades are free, and they have a subscription and a perpetual contract instead of big upfront investments and upgrades, then we can actually keep those customers growing with them over a longer period of time if we do the right thing. So potentially churn is reduced and loyalty is increased in the recurring revenue model if we do everything right. The third thing I would like to also reiterate is this is an ecosystem model. So because of the leading providers, like the ones we work with, Salesforce, Oracle, other ones, they make available their platform to lots of other software vendors. So you may be an independent software vendor who's looking into a cloud model, and you can actually join one of these application marketplaces that the big platforms are offering. And in that, then you can collaborate with others who are also integrated with that platform and open up an ecosystem around your solution as well. Or you could even offer up your own platform through APIs and other things to other partners. So it's a real ecosystem model. So we can bolt on different applications from different providers, all integrated in one platform, which allows for collaboration and also lower total cost of ownership for the customer, because the customer can choose one platform choice and have multiple choices then for extension applications around that. And most of the leading vendors have looked at this as a way to also create shared revenue models, shared reward models. So it's a very, very active and growing ecosystem. All that kind of partner ecosystem innovation into a platform that's a lower total cost of ownership for the end users. And that's very, very compelling for the customer's cost, for your own cost in delivering, and your partner's cost. It also has implications on the first two, the churn, the loyalty, and then the ability to scale to more apps. So there's a lot of benefits for your partners, for you, for developing a recurring revenue model. But certainly the game has changed. And because the game has changed, it's creating some uncertainty, it's creating some nervousness about, looking at the revenue where it's coming in and how that's going to change for the future. And so how you navigate that's very important. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you can think about in your own go-to-market model that might help you to point the way forward to making that transition. The first is really how you pursue your go-to-market, and it's a very, very different go-to-market in a recurring cloud-based revenue model than we had in the old world. The first thing is don't run it as your traditional business. I mean, your traditional business might have been built around working with partners who are putting in big hardware, big software applications, upgrades every 3 to 5 years, and so they built their billing, their systems, everything around that. To deliver that kind of service. And that's changed. That's really changed. So you need to look at things like your financial processes, how you invoice your customer, what kind of fixed costs you have. Because if in the old world, let's say we were going to do a very expensive project on a first installation with a customer, well, we could afford to take on a lot of fixed costs to kind of recoup that in some very big projects with customers. Now, if you switch that over to a recurring revenue model where we have lots more customers on a monthly subscription, that it's going to take us a lot longer, perhaps, to recur big upfront fixed cost investments. So we need to take that into consideration and really watch out for that, because the more you can transfer your costs into a variable cost model, then you can grow with the top line, which is going to grow with the recurring revenue. So matching that up is really, really important. Also looking at things like order to cash. So how fast can you turn an order all the way through to billings and to cash in your organization? In a recurring revenue models, you have to do that very quickly because we need to get a lot of cash flow going, because cash flow is really, really important in a recurring revenue model. And then also think about the indicators that you can follow, the financial indicators that tell you that the business will be growing. In the old world, we could count on a few names of customers that we could see and putting in some big installations. In the new world, it's a big numbers game. It's about lighter applications for many, many more customers. So, are we getting people to the website? Are we getting how many deals, proposals are we getting out? Look at the metrics from the sales and marketing team, and then how that fits into the cash flow needs of the organization. So that whole complete sort of lead to order to cash model needs to be really looked at very carefully, so you can really tune that and try to find ways to be more efficient. So the takeaway on that part is don't run this the same as your traditional business. It's a new business. It's a new business that has new cash flow profiles, new cost structures, and that needs to be looked at very closely. The second part is it's also a marketing game because if you're putting an application onto a recurring revenue model, you're making it available through a cloud platform, you want to invest either yourself or with your partners in lead generation. So you want to, get the word out that this is available. Try and buy, have little trial models where people could use it for 30 days for free. Innovate with marketing, trying to get people touching the application, using the application, and driving demand that way. Looking at how leads are coming in and testing different offers in the market and then monitoring that really closely and closing the loop with sales, tracking those lead metrics. And then rewarding activities. In terms of rewarding your salespeople, sometimes it's not enough in the recurring revenue model just to reward them on commission, traditional commission on a sale. You can also build rewards on lead generation, on participation in events that you're running, webinars and other things, to try to incentivize them to build that funnel to get more people coming through. So invest in lead generation, because this is one of the unique aspects of the cloud, is you can actually close the loop on leads and get people to try your application from responding to a campaign. And then build programs to encourage usage. Remember, we talked about churn and loyalty. So we want to grow and continue to increase value in the cloud as we grow with the customer. So we want the customer to extend the application to more people in their organization. We want to help them get increased value over a long period of time, and that will increase the loyalty they have with the application and reduce the churn rate. And so to look at that, we need to really monitor how they're using the application. So build in a way of tracking their usage metrics, maybe even feeding back usage metrics to the customers or to the partners that are delivering it, so that they can continue to fine-tune. They can check whether people are logging in. They can check which applications that they're using. And because it's in the cloud, we can usually monitor these things that will help us tune our offer and measure adoption. We can test out and trial new features and see if they're working. And then we can spot potential issues, because if customers aren't using the application or logging in very infrequently, it's likely they might leave. So get in front of that before contract renewal, and that'll help them build loyalty for your organization and continue to renew with you. So these are really important. It's about pursuing a different market model than the traditional old way. It's about not using your same business and financial processes of measuring your success, investing in lead generation and marketing, and then monitoring how customers are using the application, which in many cases was something we couldn't do before in the traditional on-premise model. So how do we build that back as a way to value to our customers, to be able to monitor those usage metrics and say, hey, have you thought about this feature or that feature, or you haven't used this yet? So there's a great advantage in the cloud in that regard. The other area I want to talk about is how you develop the market. So, we need to pursue a different business model, and then we also need to think about developing and encouraging and nurturing that community of users so that they continue to grow and are successful with us, because the cloud has very great advantages in extending these applications across the enterprise, as I mentioned before. One of the mistakes that companies make is kind of build it and they will come. So we just put it up there and we kind of wait and people will come, which ideally would work great. And we could all just kind of go and retire somewhere and watch the money roll in. But the fact of the matter is, it's a very, very competitive market. If you join your application in one of the application marketplaces, that's a good way, it's a good channel to market, like through Salesforce, Oracle, and other ones that we work with, because they will have some benefits and some flow of potential users coming through. But then you also just need to continue to tune your offer there to make sure you've got the right pricing, and you can play with the pricing and see what the response is. Looking at a very, very sort of focused sales funnel building model, having activities at the top in marketing and then filtering through to sales, closing the loop with inside sales, field sales if it makes sense for you or with partners, and then having very targeted promotions built on a CRM model. All works. Just really tuning that, instead of just kind of leaving it there and hoping customers find you, it's being eager and aggressive and trying new things and really making sure that people can see your application. It's a very, very complex and growing marketplace for cloud applications, but also can become quite noisy and difficult to cut through, so you need to really work on that. The other aspect is when you've got customers is help them be successful. So, you can't just kind of build it and go away. It's going back and giving them those analytics that you're tracking on usage. It's going back and finding a way to measure their satisfaction with the application. It's with the investment that they've made with you, but then you can also use that as a great way to gather feedback, because you'll learn a lot of things in continuing to interact with customers. I mean, you can use traditional methods like customer advisory boards that you meet with and get real feedback. You can use online methods and surveys. You can look at secondary type of information that's coming through from the analytics, but mainly you want to do is just make sure that customers are successful. So when they come up for renewal, that they're not saying, well, I didn't really use it, I haven't logged in for 6 months, so why don't we just end our contract? And that's about continuing education, because in a cloud services model, you should be able to make upgrades and to help customers with new features that you're launching on the application. And then it's also sharing and building success references, so helping them see what other customers are doing and how they're being successful with the application, and sharing those broadly to help them be successful. So really invest in that. That's a very, very important part of doing a successful recurring revenue model, because on the one hand, customers do have the ability to switch very easily, but then on the other hand, you have the ability to increase loyalty like you never could before. So, really invest in customer success. And then build that into a community, sharing those success stories, rewarding your partners for success references, and then building a user community. It could be an online community of users, sharing information on what they're doing. Could be a physical community where they meet, or user communities in major cities, but really investing in that, because in the new cloud services model, customers like to talk to each other and share successes that they're having, and they will share those, and you can platform your customers to promote and lead your marketing and your community building activities. And they give you great intelligence on what's going right and maybe what's not going so right. So better to hear from them yourself before they start sharing it with others. So these things you need to invest in a cloud services model. It's really building up that community of satisfied users and sharing around those success stories that you can feed into your training, you can feed into your marketing. That's very, very important. The other part is, not to fall back on sort of traditional go-to-market methods of delivering the application or enabling your sales channel. In the cloud services model, ideally, your applications can be delivered in a much more agile way. So it's building sort of lighter, small implementations of the project versus one big, year-long, big installation on-premise. The traditional methods that have been used in IT and in software deployments, like waterfall methods that take quite a long time, are sometimes not as well suited in the new cloud services model. And if you've tuned your application so it can be delivered in a very light, agile, rapid way, then you're going to start to show value to the end users much more quickly, and your partners are going to be a lot happier because they can also show value and be more successful in front of the customers. It's much better to do sort of frequent releases around a project for your partners than it is to do one big release that takes a year, because it allows them to collect feedback and make changes over time. So better to have a project over a few weeks or a month than it is, and many of those projects, than to have the one big year-long project that might miss the target at the end. So if you've tuned your application and designed your partner model in the right way, they can deliver it much more agilely than they could in the past. The second is leverage cloud development tools. And this means about looking at the various platforms for cloud development that are available in the market. Because oftentimes you can join one of these application marketplaces which comes with a development environment upon which you can integrate or even build your application for end users or allow your partners to do that. So the key components about authentication and security and a lot of the core baseline things that we traditionally would build up on a server for a customer have been handled in the new cloud platforms. And so we can use these tools to develop very interesting applications for customers. So pick a platform and then go with that platform and try to get your engineers trained on delivering through that application language, and then outsource the core functionality about the data centers and where that's going to be hosted, and the security and authentication rules, security rules, so forth, can all be outsourced to a provider. So that's an area you don't need to focus on, and you can focus more on the value-added parts of your application. The third part here I'd like to iterate is focus on an API strategy. So API is our application protocol interface. So it's the it's the way that active, open, and robust API framework around your application, or join one of the useful to partners that want to build configurations or customization, because then they can link it in to other applications that are out there as well very easily using web services. And this is the way to play in cloud services today. Having an open API strategy, promoting that API so it's easy for other people to bolt their application onto yours or into the platform, is how you get scale and how you get adoption by your customers. And it allows you to partner then with other application providers and also drive innovation. So really think about, what is our API strategy? Are we a walled garden? I mean, is our application sitting in isolation? Maybe we could have gotten away with that in the old world when we had it built up on an on-premise server, but now we're on the web, we're on the internet, we're on a cloud. And what we want to be able to do is have a way of people connecting with us so that data passing from our application can go into another application. So let's say you have a marketing application. Well, maybe you need some information from an ERP application, or from sales, or other sides of the or finance, or the organization. So how do we link to that, or make it easier to link to that, is really important. That's the API strategy. So looking at architecting your recurring revenue model is also how your application is designed on the cloud. So focus on how it can be delivered in an agile way. Use repeatable cloud development tools that are widely available from the common platforms. And then think about your API. How do people link into your application or link out? So it's very, very important. Let's shift focus a little bit here now and talk about sales, because in recurring revenue, we're rewarding our salespeople or even our partners in a different way, because in the old world, the old traditional model, as we've gone back and described it, we had a big sale up front. We were going to put a big sale of applications, servers, applications, and everything. We're going to spend a year on that project, and it's going to be very expensive for the customer. So we can afford to give salespeople a nice commission when they land that deal. In the cloud service area, in a recurring revenue model, a subscription-based revenue model, those payments now are spread out over a long period of time, sometimes on a monthly or yearly or quarterly basis. So how do we reward sales? If we give them a percent commission like we did before, that money is going to come in over a long period of time, and maybe that's not as big an incentive in landing new customers as it was before. So thinking about how you compensate your sales team, and then we're going to talk about how you compensate your partners, is also very important in driving adoption and scale in a recurring revenue model. Different models are available. So we can pay now on a contract. So we're creating kind of a hunter mentality, as exhibited by the tiger here. So out hunting and trying to land new deals. And this is about paying your salespeople for the total value of a contract, say for the first year value or multiple year value, but paying them the commission up front for that contract. So it's a bit like trying to compensate them in the old way, but because the payments are spread out, you're overcoming that by paying them on contract value, not actual invoices or returns. And salespeople will like that. You generally, especially if they like to be, they're hunters, they're really aggressive in the market and growing for you. The risk to you as a cloud services provider or those of your partners is that the cash flow is spread out over time, but the commission you're paying is upfront to the salespeople, and that might create an issue for you in terms of cash flow, or how do you reconcile that if you can't collect from the customer later. So you're really taking the risk that that continuing series of cash flow payments over time will be coming into you, but you're going to reward your salespeople up front so they don't shoulder that risk. And it's a good model, and it will work. If you can afford it, then you probably get a lot of sales with this model. The other model is sort of an interim hybrid, as exhibited here by our nice friendly dog, and is out there with faithful service catching a stick whenever we throw it. We can pay now, or we can pay pay later, so we can have a combination. So we could pay something up front now for getting a new customer based on the contract value, and then we can recognize commissions over time and pay those out as the contract is paid as well. The subscription is paid from the end user. This is a particularly good model for what we call farmers in the sales business. I'm a sales director, so we have hunters on the left, and we have farmers in the middle, who are ones that are just really growing those customers. And it's actually quite nice for a recurring revenue model because it does give some reward up front, but then it also encourages the salespeople to stay in touch with the customer. Because remember, in recurring revenue, it's really important that we're staying in touch with them. We're helping the customer be successful. You may even split this out between two teams, and some organizations do this. They'll pay upfront to the hunters to go land the contract, and then they'll turn the contract over to like a customer success manager who will get a long-term reward in staying in touch with that customer, helping them increase usage. It's good. Sometimes this results in lower sales compensation, so it is good for more relationship-building type salespeople and what we call farmers. So that's another model that can be very successful. The third model, and one that might seem attractive from a finance perspective, is to exactly match the commission to the salespeople based on the cash flow or when the customers pay. And that's basically paying later. So when the customer pays their subscription over quarters, over months, or a year, then the salespeople is getting a proportion of that. Generally, this doesn't work very well in the recurring revenue model. Yeah, while it's optimized from a cash flow perspective, so when you get cash, you pay a percentage in commission, it's really the least incentive because now the long-term payments of the application, which while so attractive for the end user, because the end user is spreading out their cash flow, it's just not as interesting for salespeople because it's going to take them a long time to build up a series of customers that are of significant value in commission. So I would encourage you to think about, the middle model or the one on the left as being the ones that would more likely suited to a recurring revenue model. The one on the right was suited to the old world, but now with the recurring revenue model, we need to overcome the difference in the cash flow over time and then how we reward the salespeople. So do think about how you do that to keep the incentives high. Feeding through to the channel now and how we compensate partners is also different models you might consider. How you compensate your partners might differ by geography, might differ by application, might differ by the different value add that they're offering. Just at a very basic level, you can decide to pay no compensation to partners today. So some of the application vendors that we work with in certain markets pay no compensation because the partners are making money on the consulting services around configuring and customizing the application. So they make money on services and support. So the application itself maybe doesn't need to give partners any commission. And it's certainly feasible to do this. This is a lot easier to administer, of course, because you're not making any payments back to partners. However, it might be less incentive, and traditionally in the channel we had lots of incentive programs and different commissioning programs that, if those go away and the partners are only making money on their services, it may be less incentive if there's not enough in it for them. So just think about that. But it is feasible, and some of the leading vendors that are in the market are offering this model. You can also pay the partner on a commission to give them a percentage of the revenue of the licenses that are being sold to the customers that they're selling to. This is good to have an incentive because partners then will feed more business your way. It also makes onboarding very fast because it's a very linear relationship. If you sell licenses, you get a commission based on a percentage of the value of those licenses. It also can introduce some channel conflict, and those of us who've worked in the channel for years will understand that. And let's say a partner identifies a lead and another partner maybe identifies that same customer. Who's going to get credit if that customer buys? Maybe, or what sometimes happens, you might have conflict between the vendor software company that might be selling direct as well and the partner channel, and then who was spoken to first, who gets credit, and so forth. So really think carefully about that because you don't want conflict. Conflict will work against you. A little bit of healthy conflict can create an active marketplace, but you'd rather be having partners focused on landing business than fighting with each other or potentially conflict with the vendors. So, but paying a commission on licenses is a very good business, and you can vary that commission depending on how much support you provide. So in some countries or regions, you might not have a lot of people on the ground, or people on the phone that can work, so maybe the partner is getting a higher percentage to represent you there. In others, it might be less, or it might be even zero, as we see on the left. And then the third model is think about a resale margin, where maybe the partner is buying licenses or making commitments on licenses up front and then reselling those at a margin that they determine into the end user market. And this is also a very good model. It allows for probably partners that are pushing sales a lot more aggressively because they're going to buy some licenses up front and then want to offload those and get customers using those successfully. It can be more risky for partners, so you have to think about how the margin is structured. Is there enough margin in that kind of arrangement for them to shoulder the risk of also taking licenses that could potentially be unsold, that are a cost to them? But it's a very good model, especially in areas where you don't have good coverage or people on the ground, where you want partners to really prime the market on your behalf. What I have seen in cloud services and recurring revenue models is actually some vendors deploy all three and various other variations of this model depending on which geography they're in, which segment or which application they're going for. So in the cases of a vendor might give no compensation or little compensation where they have a huge presence in the country, but then at the same time they might give a very high resale margin in countries or regions where they really have no presence at all and they're requiring the partners to develop the market on their behalf. And so think about how you can structure that and then what makes sense for you in which market. So finally, just wrapping up on the slides and prepared comments, and then we can go to some of your questions. Really the key to successes in the recurring revenue model are many things. I mean, it's a different business than we had before. We looked at the dynamics that are driving the market are really coming from the end users. The end users, frankly, are getting really tired of making huge investments in big software implementations that and hardware implementations that may or may not deliver the value they seek, and then 3 or 5 years later they have to make an expensive upgrade. That's been the business model for a long time in IT, and it still is in many cases. But when you look at the cloud, the customers that are adopting the cloud are looking for something that's a lot more agile, it's a lot more scalable and flexible, and it delivers a continuous value curve over time. And so how you organize your business against that in terms of your financial processes, the lead to order to cash, how you incentivize your salespeople, how you find new customers, how you develop your community and share success stories, these are all things that are really important in pursuing a new way of doing business that will really give you great results. Make sure your application is very easy to find, to provision, easy to upgrade. The leading vendors are offering free upgrades as long as the customers are paying the subscription, and they have try and buy models, so it's easy for them to start using it. Develop the community and success stories. Really share those success stories so that people can learn from each other and develop a community of satisfied users. Look at your incentive plans. Remember, looking at sales and looking at how you incentivize your partners will make a big difference. The cash flow of subscriptions in a recurring revenue model is completely different from the old way. And so how do you incentivize your salespeople and your partners so that they're still in a highly rewarded mode to help you build the market will be very important. And then the degree that you can cover any cash flow timing changes is going to be the key to success in the market. Because cash flow, as they say, is king. And it's in this business, it's even more so because the cash flow is spread out now over a long period of time. And hopefully customers are going to stay with applications for 5 or 10 years. So think about a recurring monthly or quarterly or yearly revenue flow over 10 years from customers. But that's going to really change the dynamics of the value with it heavily weighted towards the latter years after the customer has been using it for quite a long time is when you get the value back. So, looking at your fixed costs up front, looking at how you're rewarding partners and your salespeople, all the things at the upfront are going to put you in a cash flow deficit because the long-term revenue comes later. So think about how you can cover that. But, the customer dynamics are driving this. Partners are responding and building up successful businesses on this. And some of the leading software vendors are now cloud only and actually making the transition to the cloud. So a recurring revenue model can be very attractive and hopefully something that you're going to take those first steps in or continue to learn about. These are my contact details if you want to get in touch with me. I'm based here in London working with an implementer, as I said, Atlantic Technologies. This is Mark Emanuelson, and I'd be delighted to take any questions that you have at this moment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. So we will open up for questions like Mark mentioned. If you would like to ask a question, please just raise your hand using the raise hand button located in the GoToWebinar control panel. If at any time your question has been answered, please lower your hand to remove yourself from the question queue. And if you prefer, you can always ask a question via the chat box or the question panel. And those are all located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. All right, Mark, we got one coming in. How do you manage a recurring revenue model alongside a traditional one?
Well, this is a very good question because judging from the poll that we started off with, it's something that many of you are grappling with. I mean, most of the people on the call had a very small portion of recurring revenue today or cloud services and are thinking of how they make this transition. You really have to separate it out. So, it's definitely you want to make both offers available because, the cloud is where the growth is happening. It's think about how you really separate that out in a way that, you're not mixing costs, so you're not overloading, say, the cloud model from success by overloading too many fixed costs, which you can kind of afford in the traditional model, or you're not incentivizing the wrong kind of sales and commission incentive by just porting over the same model that you had on the other side. So it's really kind of separating out and having a different go-to-market. And sometimes, like with cloud services, you may even want to go direct, or you might want to do something interesting with partners. You might have much more of a partner-centric model on the traditional side because you have partners who need to work a long time with customers. So it's really a different business, and it's about separating that out, but giving customers the choice because most customers are moving and adopting the cloud, are very interested in that today. There's in terms of the poll we started off with, where 60% have between 0 and 10% of cloud services revenue. If you look at some of the figures coming out from end users, like CIOs at companies, and how much cloud services they're deploying today, it's a much higher percentage than those of us who are looking at it today. So, think about how you respond to that. Keep it separate, and then incentivize the right performance in the right way.
Wonderful. This question kind of goes back to the compensation slide you're on, Mark. Do the partners typically get a discount from what the provider sells these services for? The question is
are the partners getting a discount from what the provider's services for?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So what you want to do here is think about what margin are you going to extend through to the channel partners. Okay, so I work at a partner, and we deploy applications from Salesforce and Oracle and other application providers. And they all have various different incentive programs depending on what we're delivering, which country we're operating in as well, and other factors. But in that, there's a margin. There's a margin for the partner. In that margin, somehow the partner's got to invest in training his or her people. They have to train. They have to do marketing. They have to do all the things to find customers for you. And so you need to give. You can do that in many different ways. You can give them a commission, as I've said here, where they get commission on license revenue. You can give them a margin on resale, so your cost to the partner is a certain amount, and then they can charge the customer, that plus a margin, or which is the commission built in, or it could be a straight resale, and it could be on services. So it doesn't necessarily need to be licenses. It could be on your expert services delivered through a partner, where they can mark. Really important is to have that kind of discount available to the partners, who can pass it on, say at full price or with the margin applied.
Awesome. How do you find vendors to sell cloud services for?
We're active in the market, so we respond to what our customers are asking for. I mean, as a partner, we have made a name for ourselves in certain segments. So we have quite a few partners in life sciences, or telco, or in manufacturing, or we also work with some not-for-profit clients. And so we're usually looking for applications then that kind of fit into those niche areas where we feel we have a story to tell, and we have success references that we can point to. And what's happening more and more is we're turning to these application marketplaces that are building around Salesforce, around Oracle, around other areas, and saying, okay, does it integrate with other things that we're doing with those customers? Because we want to take a total solution story to the end user. And rather than having a lot of discrete applications, they all need to talk to each other now, because they need these APIs to link together. And those common application marketplaces have that kind of built in, because the API is integrated into the platform. And so those are some of the factors. We also look at how we can train our consultants on that, our developers. Can they become expert on that platform? Is there margin available to us, and so forth. So those are the kind of things that we assess for new applications that we take to our end user customers.
Wonderful. Is there a rule of thumb when pricing old versus recurring, i.e. over 2 years, the price is the same after discounting future cash flows?
Interesting question. I think you're asking the right question. You're asking the right question about cash flow, and modeling that out over customers. I think what I hear you saying is that if a customer's been with you on that platform for a certain number of years, maybe they're getting a discount applied, or they have a different pricing structure. What I see in the marketplace is basically, if customers are signing today, they're going to have that price over probably the lifetime of that contract. There's no need to really vary that, unless you, of course, want to increase prices, or you want to keep them on by decreasing it. The key here is increasing value. Remember, the value curve wasn't about it is about lower total cost of ownership, but it's about continuing to increase value, making upgrades free, adding new features, increasing adoption. So that's where the game is played. That's where loyalty is increased, and the increased churn is lower. So, a better pricing structure is to keep the pricing constant if you can, but increasing the value, so what customers realize from it later is higher in terms of ROI than they had at the beginning. So that's the way to be successful.
Okay, great. Well, unfortunately, we have hit the top of the hour, so Mark, thank you again for your time and answering all these questions.
It was my pleasure, and I wish everyone best wishes in your journey to recurring revenue. So it's an exciting time for IT, and I'm just glad to be a part of it, and was happy to spend this time and share some insights with you. So thank you.
Indeed, you're very welcome. So there have been a few additional questions that we weren't able to get to due to the time constraint, unfortunately, but we will actually try to post these into a forum on the Cloud Services community website under the topic Things to Consider When Transitioning to a Recurring Revenue Model. And we'll be able to work with Mark to get any of those questions answered as well as any other follow-up questions. So thank you again, everyone, for attending. Please do take a few moments to fill out your post-event survey. Your input is very important to us for planning future events. And this concludes today's conference. You may now disconnect.